Hi, everyone. My name is Luisa Ossa. I'm professor of Spanish and director of the Black Studies minor at LaSalle University in Philadelphia. I'm excited to be part of the Future Waves conference. Um, my work generally focuses on the Black diaspora in Latin America, particularly Colombia, as well as making connections between Latin America and the United States. In particular, I focus on analysis of literature, culture, and music. And so when our esteemed host, Dr. Walter Grayson, invited me to participate in the conference, I felt a little unsure. I was honored, of course, but I felt a little unsure of what work to share. Um, I decided I wanted to focus on music because it's something I really love to talk about, but I still felt a bit unsure as someone who is not an Afrofuturism scholar. But I am on a journey of learning about it and immersing myself in it through Dr. Grayson's work and the work of many other scholars that I've been studying. Um, Even though I wasn't sure about what work to share or how well my work would fit in, Dr. Grayson assured me that my work was welcome because it's relevant to the diaspora, even if it's not explicitly on Afrofuturism. But as I said of late, I've been immersing myself, really trying to um, gain a deeper understanding. And so I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could apply some of my learning at least to some of my work, kind of look at things that I study through a different lens. So after reflecting and thinking about some of the principles of Afrofuturism, such as agency and freedom, liberation, imagining futures while also still honoring the past and being informed by the past, and in particular, um, thinking about Yatasha Womack's new book, The Afrofuturist Evolution, in which I'm currently very much immersed. I decided to examine the song Rebelión by a Colombian singer named Joe Arroyo through an Afrofuturistic lens. So this is a song I really love, just as a person, not just as a scholar. Um, but I've also analyzed and published about it. Um, One of my early publications in my career was about the song. But however, I realized that applying an Afrofuturistic lens to the song gives me um, new language, new frameworks to kind of discuss elements of the song that I find very important, impactful, but have um, but now I can articulate my ideas in new ways from a different perspective and show why I feel like the song is so impactful, not just to me, but it's resonated for decades upon decades and is even seeing a resurgence today. And this song is from 1986. Okay. So, with that, I'm going to share my screen. So, I decided to title the presentation Places, Spaces, Love, and Rebellion, Joe Arroyo's Rebellion through an Afrofuturistic lens. Um, and so before I get more deeply into the analysis of the song, I want to give an overview of Colombia, particularly the Afro-Colombian population, and also, of course, discuss Joe Arroyo a little bit. So, for those who aren't familiar, Colombia has one of the largest Black populations in the Americas. It's second to Brazil of Afro-descendant population in Latin America. And what's interesting and important to note, though, is that official government counts generally list Afro-Colombians as approximately 10% of the population. But if you do more research, you'll see that many like human rights organizations and scholars of Afro-Colombians or the diaspora in Latin America generally tend to estimate the population higher. I've seen estimates range from like 15% to 30%. Um, and one example is the Minorities' Right Group, which I'm kind of citing here. And so um, there's a map of Colombia over on the side. So um, Joao Arroyos was born in Cartagena on the Caribbean coast, and he died in Barranquilla, which is also on the coast. And Cartagena is a very important city when we're thinking of um, the history of the diaspora. So it was a major port for the transatlantic slave trade. Um, since on the coast, it was entry point not just for enslaved people to be enslaved in Colombia, but also was a point to send enslaved people to other parts of Latin America, like Peru, and even further south, places like Argentina. Um, so, um, so that's also important to keep in mind when we think about the song, where he was from, and the history of Cartagena. So Arroyo himself is considered one of Colombia's most important musical artists. He's been really influential to um, on the work of a lot of artists, particularly Colombian artists. Shakira has been influenced by him. Juanes discovered some of his songs. Other Latin American artists also hold him in high esteem. He also um, his popularity led to telenovela, a soap opera about his life, and a couple of years ago, I need to watch it, but Netflix did a film on his life as well. I have it on my list of things to watch. So, uh, as I said, he had an amazing musical trajectory. He's particularly known for salsa, but he also um, recorded other genres, particularly Colombian genres like cumbia. Rebellion is probably his most famous song. It's considered a classic. And so the song is set in the 1600s, and it tells the story of a married enslaved couple. It's told from the enslaved man's perspective and tells how he rebels to protect his wife from being beaten by an enslaver. And so after its release, the song became kind of an anthem, particularly for people of African descent in Latin America. But as you'll see, and mentioned throughout the presentation, the song has had lasting impact. So after its release in the 80s, during my salsa dancing days, I still dance a little bit, not as much as I used to, but you would always hear it at clubs or parties. Um, but now through Social media, you're seeing its resurgence as well. Excuse me. And so, for example, it was named one of Billboard's 15 best salsa songs ever. In recent years, younger generations are discovering this classic and discussing both its infectious music and meaningful lyrics on social media. Okay. I'm going to stop share for a minute and I am going to um, try and share the video directly from YouTube because sometimes they are audio issues when I try to share the embedded version. Okay, so I want to share first just part of him of performance of his um, in his younger days so that you can just get a feel for the song and get to see him performing. Cuando el tirano mandó las calles de aquella historia, cuando ahí pensaba mi tierra, es para mí perpetua. Un matrimonio estaba en España, él era y a su negra So, as you could hear, it's a song with like a very infectious groove, like right from the first few notes, especially if you like to dance, right? It hooks you in. People who are salseros or salseras generally love to like dance to that song. So you have that initial level of like, oh, this is just like a great song to dance to, right? But as we're discussing, the song also has a profound story that it's telling. So now I'm going to play another clip. Um, but this is a video that has the lyrics in English and Spanish. So I'll play a few parts of it just so everyone can get the gist of the story he's telling in a little more detail than my overview. Okay, so now as I mentioned, I'll play video that provides some of the lyrics. Cuando el tirano mandó las calles de Cartagena, aquella historia vivió. A little bit. Esclavos de un español, él le daba todo, y a su negra pegó. Oye, Okay, so hopefully that provides everyone with a good feel for the song and the story that he's telling in Rebellion. So I'm going to share my presentation again. So, as I said, I've been kind of immersing myself in Afrofuturistic thought, and in the book I'm been um, reading currently is The Afrofuturist Revolution by Yatasha Womack, and in there she discusses the story as prism, and so she uses a prism as a metaphor for time and space, and she discusses how the prism is space, and through it you see light refracted in many colors, and the colors usually appear as lines, right? And how the lines coexist simultaneously. But what you see can be different, right, depending on the angle through which you look at the prism, right? And so her prism metaphor framework also serves to emphasize how we can occupy multiple time periods and spaces at once. So, for example, she talks about how you can be sitting in one place, but your mind is in another. So she gives an example of you're in a specific place in the present, and there are things going on around you in your present, but at the same time, mentally, you can be thinking about a future event in a whole different location. So that you really are in multiple spaces and places at once when you do that, right? And so that kind of gave me new language or a wider way range of ways of discussing ideas I already had about the song and some of the salsa I like the most, which is like social and political salsa, because I've always been drawn to that like dichotomy or tension or contradiction, where on the one hand, you hear a song that's just like a jam or a bop, right? You just want to go out to the dance floor and dance. But on the other hand, um, when you really start paying attention, there are very serious issues being discussed, right? Or even sad or tragic things, depending on the song, right? And in this case, we have something very profound. Um, we have um, the history of enslavement in Colombia, but at the same time, we also have a love song, right? Um, Lyrically, but we have it put over this very infectious, danceable beat, right? So we have all those things coexisting at once, but we also have a song that lyrically, right, it's rooted in the past, right? Again, like I just mentioned, it's rooted in the colonization of the Americas and wants to tell part of that story. But it's also a song of its time, right? Written in 1980, released in 1986. And just so it's clear, Joe Arroyo wrote the song. He's not just the performing artist, he wrote the song. And but in many ways, the song was also ahead of its time, right? Because it continued to resonate. It was embraced, right, as an anthem for liberation, but also continued to persist in popularity, as I said, continued to be popular in clubs and parties, and now again is finding a resurgence through social media, both because of its danceability, but also because of its meaning, right? So you see all these times, places, spaces, meanings all coinciding. And so I just think of that as a very interesting way to kind of frame the meaning and the impact of the song and how it has all these different layers, right? Or if we use the prism model, if you look at it one way, it's just a catchy dance song. If you look at it another way, it's really impactful about slavery. If you look at it another way, it's a love song, right? And I'll touch on that a little bit more uh, in the presentation, right? So, as I mentioned, um, the song is having a resurgence, so that's not just my bias. Um, this the clip from Instagram I'm going to show you is from last year, but this is just an example. I've seen many like posts in social media about this song that are similar, about somebody being shocked when they could finally realize what the song is about. And so this seems to be happening particularly with people of Latin American descent in the States. And so I'm going to stop sharing my presentation again and try and go Instagram to make sure the audio plays correctly. Okay. So I'm going to play this clip. So, as you could hopefully note in post, the post is about how he's been dancing to this song all these years and then recently realized that the song was about slavery. So that has a new impact and meaning to him. So go back to my presentation. Resume sharing my screen. So as I started to mention, but when I kind of reinforce, right? So when you're thinking about this idea of a prism, you have all these ways that you can view this song, right? That are really interesting, make the song very multifaceted, multi-layered, right? So on the most superficial level, the song is a jam, a bop, or in Spanish you would call it un temazo, un cañonazo. But once we delve deeper, right, you have a history lesson about enslavement in Colombia, more broadly in the Americas. It's a call for liberation, right? Because the protagonist of the story is rebelling against his enslaver, but we also have a love story, right? Because the focus is that despite all the horrible treatment that the enslaved couple has received, it's seeing the enslaver try to hit his wife that is the impetus for his rebellion, right? So, and I also think that that's a very important, meaningful storyline that Arroyo chose because, as we know, people of African descent, when enslaved, historically were so dehumanized. And so generally, you don't hear stories of love or married couples or things like that. And I think it was very intentional by Arroyo to choose to tell this history, but through the lens of a loving couple, right? And how that leads to the protagonist's rebellion. And so these are the types of things that I've been thinking about with the song, and more broadly, how to apply Afrofuturistic thought to the kinds of things I study, like literature and music, right? Because so often, especially for people that are on the outside, Afrofuturism is so often tied to um, like sci-fi and outer space, and I know that those are very critical elements. So don't misinterpret when I say that. But also, many scholars like Womack and others also talk about how it's also what I discussed in this presentation doesn't have to be like literal outer space, but just how you think about space and time and things coexisting or not being linear, multiple truths being um, held at once, all those sorts of ideas, right? So when you think about those kind of ideas and concepts, and also the anchor points of liberation and love and looking for a new future, you see all these things in this song, right? The rebellion is a call for a new future. It's rooted in love, his love for um, his wife, but obviously we can extrapolate that and make that to a broader love, right? Of his people and a liberation, a broader call for the liberation of oppressed Black people, right? So these are all the types of things that I've been thinking about. So I hope that you found this presentation interesting. For those familiar with the song, I hope that it gave you that you might want to revisit it and think about it in new ways. And for those who um, hadn't heard the song before and are learning about the song through this presentation, I hope that it's giving you um, something interesting to think about, a new song to like. Hopefully, you'll look it up and listen to it all the way through. So here's some of my works cited in the presentation. Thank you all for watching. Thank you again, Dr. Grayson, for the invitation. I'm really honored to participate. So goodbye, everyone. Bye.